And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Ryan Metzler.
Hey everyone, it's Ryan Metzler here, and today we're going to be taking a look at one of the games that I've been looking forward to for a long time. We have Ora et Labora by Uwe Rosenberg. And this is the fourth game in what was previously called the Harvest Trilogy of Agricola, At the Gates of Loyang, and Le Havre. It is going to be a game about building up a settlement either in France or Ireland, kind of getting goods, trading those goods in to build buildings and convert them into victory points, by either expanding your settlement or having the most valuable goods, which will score you points at the end of the game. It uses kind of a rondel type of mechanic. It's not a worker placement rondel, but it is a rondel, in order to kind of minimize the fiddliness of the game. So why don't we take a look at how all of that works. I'll give you a brief summary of gameplay, and then we'll come back here and I'll give you my opinion on the game as a whole. So just for some wow factor, here is the goods that come with Ora et Labora. Now this is all of the goods. We have the 6 basic goods out here, and then we have some of the more advanced goods that will either be used in some of the variants, such as grapes here, and whiskey, which are only used in some of the variants. But the basic goods we have are wheat, and then on the reverse side straw. We have peat and peat coal on the other side, wood, and on the other side barrels, or whiskey, or whatever you want to call it. On this side we have sheep, and on the other side meat. We have clay and pots, and then money, and we have some books on the other side. There's also going to be several other things. We're going to have bread and flour and grapes and malt and all types of stuff, but just know you have all of these tokens. There's a bunch of cardboard goodness here, and you're going to be using these a lot throughout the game. Anyhow, let's take a look at the central mechanic of the game and a little bit how it plays. So here you can see a lot of the components for Ora et Labora. I'm only showing one player board, and I'm only going to briefly cover the mechanics of the game. The main mechanic is going to focus around this rondel type of thing here, which isn't really for taking actions, but it kind of is, and around buildings that you're going to build. And you'll note that you start with a couple of buildings on your board. This is a player board. You have a clay mound, you have a cloister office, and you have a farmyard. Additionally, you're going to have several places to get wood and to get peat. And these are going to be plots that you can buy later, so ignore these for now. Additionally, each player is going to have a set of cards that they can build on, and you're only going to have some of these at the beginning of the game, but when you get around to certain settlement type phases, you're going to be able to build these, and they're going to score you points at the end of the game. Now, the game focuses around getting resources. If you're familiar with Agricola or Le Havre or even At the Gates of Loyang, this is in that series of games, and it kind of tries to improve upon the fiddliness of Le Havre a little bit. And it does that by using this wheel over here. And on a player's turn, they're going to go over a certain series of events. The first thing they're going to do is that if they've used all of their workers, which are these guys here, you have 2 kind of basic workers, and you have your prior, or whatever this guy is, who's kind of a special guy. If you've used all 3 of them by placing them on buildings, you're going to take them back, and you're going to get them back, and you'll be able to take them again for new actions. But after that, you're going to rotate this production wheel. And what this does, if you look closely, is you can see that by rotating this, you've now made it so that all of these goods markers, you have trees, or wood, and peat, and money, and the joker, which is a anything, straw, and sheep, they're all now at 1. So if you were to take an action to get any of those, you would get 1 of them, and then you would move this all the way down. After you've rotated that wheel, every player is going to get 1 action, starting with whoever the star player is. And that player is going to take their action, which could be one of several things. They could place one of their guys on a building. For example, if I were to place my worker on my farmyard, that's going to let me either take the wheat or the sheep, and I would take the appropriate marker, and I would move it to 0. And I would go ahead and take the resource and add it to my play area, so now I have a wheat. Or I could fell or cut trees, and this actually doesn't require you to place a worker. You would simply just remove one of these cards from your area and move the appropriate marker down. So if I were to take one of these tree areas off, it would give me 1 tree, and I would remove this, and it'll also free up another area to build on. The third option is that you can build a building, and there are going to be several buildings available in the different phases of the game. So at the start, we're playing the Ireland variant here, but there are different buildings for the France variant. You can buy several buildings, and in order to build them, you're going to have to look at the costs here. So this requires 2 stone and a wheat. It's going to give you 9 victory points on its own, and then if it's next to a special type of building at the end of the game, you can see here in the purple, it's going to contribute 7 more points. Additionally, it lets you convert these 2 goods here into a beer, and then after you've done that, or if you don't want to do that, you can sell 1 beer for 7 money. And money is going to provide you with all different types of things throughout the game. And there are tons of different buildings. For example, this one here that requires a clay and a straw or a wheat to build. It's going to give you 5 victory points, an additional 2 if you have it next to a special type of building at the end of the game. And it's going to allow you to convert any type of energy, which could be wood or peat or straw, into a different amount of money down here. So there are different types of buildings, and you could build those. And after you've taken your actions, it's going to go to the next player, and they're going to take 1 action. And then it's going to go to the next player, and they're going to take an action, until it gets back to the first player, who gets a 2nd action each round. So the start player of each round is always going to get 2 actions. Now, it's also possible to pay your opponents to use their buildings. So let's say that this player out on our board here had built this fuel merchant, and somebody else decides that they want to use it. Well, they can pay this player 1 money until a special building is built, and that player would have to use one of their own workers to place onto this building. So essentially, you're hiring their workers to place it there. Now, in the Ireland variant, which is what's showing here, later in the game, you're able to get whiskey. And whiskey is a special good, and what you can do with whiskey is you can actually throw a whiskey away, essentially getting the other player's worker drunk in order to use their building for free. So you throw this back to the supply and you can use their building for free. Now, the special worker, the one that doesn't look like the other ones right here, if you still have this guy available when you build your building, so let's say this player had just spent his clay and his straw or his wheat to build a building, he could immediately place this guy out on it and use the building at the same time. So this is a smart way to get 2 actions at once for having placed a building when you still had your prior available. Now, there are also some special types of buildings that are called cloister buildings. For example, this cloister courtyard, you can see it's a cloister building because it has this yellow here, and these can only be built next to the yellow buildings on your thing. So you would have to build this here, and if you wanted to build any more cloister buildings, you would have to build an expansion. And that's what these are here. You can see that there's a plot here. This one has kind of a hillside area and 3 forests, except for only one of them actually has trees on it, so it's 3 open plots of land in a forest. Whereas this one here has a mountainside and 2 hills, or if you flip it over, it actually has a beach and some water, and water is really only useful in a couple of the variants, and beach is only useful for a couple things. On the opposite side of the other one, we just have a different distribution of hills and trees. After you've gone through a full round, the start player token is going to pass to the next player, and they're going to do the same thing. They're going to adjust this, and they're going to, now the goods are worth more again, until you get to special spots. So you're going to go through several turns until you hit this, and you'll hit this building marker that's on the thing. What this is going to do is it's going to give everybody some cards to build, and they're going to be able to build one of these cards that I showed you at the beginning. They have these special cards, and you'll see here they have this arrow on them. And this arrow means that at the end of the game, you're going to score the red points for all of the buildings that are next to this building. So you'll see this one itself is worth 2. You would count those, and then any building you've built next to it, for example, the fuel merchant is going to add its red number to it. So this would be worth 2, 4 in this case if you would build this next to it. So there's a plan to try and build as many buildings next to those that are worth red points as possible in order to score them at the end of the game. In addition, each time that you hit one of those areas, some new buildings are going to come out, giving you better and more complex things to do, more points, and various other ways to convert goods to other goods. You're going to go through this until you go around this whole board twice. So you're going to keep adding more cards, getting more goods, converting them into more areas, buying more plots, which you can do at any point on your turn for the value listed on the card. They actually start cheaper and get more expensive as you buy them. Building more buildings and trying to get other buildings next to things and convert things into either types of goods that provide victory points, such as whiskey, or, clay jugs here, which provide 3 victory points at the end of the game, or to earn points by building expensive, nice buildings and putting them next to your settlements, which give you additional points for having areas of buildings. After you've gone through the game twice, you're going to get one more action at the end of the game where you can place on any building with any of your workers, and or build a new building and place your prior, and whoever has the most victory points, counting up all of the victory points for all of their different buildings, all of the red victory points for their settlements, and all of the victory points for the remaining goods is going to be the winner. Now, I know that was very fast and that there's a lot going on in the game, and there's actually a nice player guide, or kind of nice player guide, that summarizes all of the rules, gives you the turn orders, all of the possible actions, all of the different goods and what they can be converted to, all on one thing of paper. Now, the problem is that it's just paper. It's not a board. It's a flimsy sheet of paper. On the back, you can see all of the different buildings, but the quality of these is really subpar, and this is my major gripe with the game, as well as the fact that if you permanently put these wheels together, and there are different wheels for 2, 3, and 4 players, if you permanently put them together, they won't come apart easily. So be very careful when assembling this. This thing can be a hassle to get back apart. Now, why don't we go take a look at my final opinion of the game. So there you have it. That's Ora et Labora. And if you know my taste, you know right away that this is my style of game. I already like Agricola, I like Loyang, and Le Havre I was somewhat disappointed with. Now, Ora et Labora is really the logical successor to Le Havre, so if you like that game, you're probably going to like Ora et Labora. Now, Le Havre had some problems where it wasn't real great for over 3 players, and it got really fiddly with the tiny little tokens, and the constantly moving them around, placing them on the board, moving them to your own area, taking buildings, having people read across the board. And Ora et Labora tries to solve a lot of these with that wheel that you saw, the wheel which controls how many goods are available in play. Instead of having all the little chits out there, you have the little wooden pieces that you can move around and simply take the chits from a different area. It doesn't really solve the trying to read buildings across the board type of thing. You're still going to have to lean across and read a building, but oftentimes you know what they've got because you read it before they picked it up, and they got it before you did, even though you really wanted it. So it's not really that hard to track what buildings are available. It definitely fixes the fiddliness, and I think it really combines all of the experience of Le Havre, a lot of the experience of Le Havre, into a shorter, more manageable time frame while not losing a lot of the depth and complexity. So overall, I'd say it's a pretty good game. I'm a little disappointed in the component quality. The cardboard chits are really nice, the wooden pieces are really nice, but I feel like they skimped a little bit on cards and player aids as well as maybe the individual player boards. I think they could potentially have gone with a little bit thicker cardboard on the player boards. They could have at least put the player aids onto a cardstock type of paper instead of an individual glossy sheet of magazine paper, and the cards could have been a little bit bigger, perhaps more of a standard size than the small Euro size. But overall, I'm very happy with Ora et Labora. In terms of its position in the Harvest Trilogy or Quadrilogy, I'd say it's definitely near the top for me. Maybe not quite surpassing Agricola, but that could happen in time. So, if you like any of those previous games that I mentioned, or you like a nice, heavy, medium to heavy Euro, check out Ora et Labora. This is a game that I would definitely give 2 thumbs up.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find the latest board game news at Dicetowernews.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Fun Again Games, the world's best game source. Fun Again Games has over 5,000 games available. Check them out at funagain.com.